All right, everyone. This is Kill2 here with T-Days. We're looking at a match between HUN Reloaded and Legion of xXDEATHXx. This is our third match after the break on Day 5 of Alliance Tournament 7. For HUN Reloaded, they brought 1 Harbinger, 2 Brutix, 2 Hurricane, 1 Rook, 1 Lachesis, and 1 Guardian.
And Legion of xXDEATHXx have brought 2 Chronos, 2 Hyperion, Nighthawk, 2 Saber, and 2 Thrashers.
And this should be really interesting. 2 Chronos, 2 Hyperion is something that... Did try that exactly? They had a similar setup at least. We haven't seen a whole lot of blaster ships in the tournament, and it should be real interesting. They got a good draw here because the HUN Reloaded team has come in pretty close to them, but only their battlecruisers. So as long as the Legion of Death DPS isn't too, troubled by the E-War coming from that Rook and the Lachesis, when the Lachesis really not contributing a lot, I think this may go Legion of Death's way real fast. But we're underway now, so we'll find out soon.
Yeah, we get first damage now onto one of the Hyperion for Legion of Death, and it looks like they've decided to go for one of the Brutix on the HUN Reloaded side.
Of course, the big advantage, or one of the big advantages to fielding these battlecruiser teams, is that you have a lot of mids for tracking disruptors that the battleships need to use for cap injection and ECCMs and stuff like that. This HUN Reloaded team a little different because they don't have as many battlecruisers. Often you gain a numbers advantage by fielding the battlecruiser, and in this case, they don't have too many more ships. Actually, they have less ships in Legion of Death.
Yeah, that Hyperion is looking quite... it's not able to tank that at all. Obviously Hyperion gets a bonus to the repping abilities of it, but it doesn't look like it's able to keep up, and it's going into structure. Meanwhile, on the other side, one of the Hurricanes for HUN Reloaded is in half armor, looking very dangerous.
Yeah, that Hurricane now taking damage. The damage from Legion of Death started out real slow. Maybe tracking disruptors, maybe just a lot of jams. That first Hyperion down now, so the damage will slow down even more. That Hurricane continuing to get shot at by at least one of the battleships, and possibly the little ships as well. Actually, it looks like to me the Sabers and the Thrashers are out harassing that E-War. They're out there trying to work on that Rook for HUN Reloaded to free up some of their targeting.
Yeah, the Rook's pulled back a bit of armour, so obviously the Guardian doing his job there. The Hurricane is in half structure now. Obviously that's because of the size difference of the ships. The battleships will have more of a difficulty hitting the battlecruisers, and the battlecruisers will have hitting the battleships. So if they've got any sort of tracking disruption as one of those Brutix, as Hurricane goes down, it has more of an effect on the battleships than it will on the battlecruisers.
I'm sorry, that's actually not the Legion of Death frigs that are harassing that Rook, it's the Nighthawk. So the Nighthawk has left the fray and headed out after that Rook, which is interesting considering that the Nighthawk really has the option to do this from close to the fight unless those are heavy assault missiles, which I can't tell because he's so close to the guy I can't get the thing to highlight over him. It looks like Legion of Death is using their Sabers for electronic warfare only. They're not applying any damage to anything. They're running probably tracking disruptors down into the middle of the fight from a good 30 or 40k range, and that second Hyperion just went down for Legion of Death.
Yeah, they're now starting to work on that Legion of Death Chronos. It's looking like the Legion of Death are going to go out at this point. The battlecruiser heavy setup taking a much more damage output than the battleships have been able to apply.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that the Legion of Death team isn't using their destroyers for any damage. It's possible they're running artillery with like Tremor, and they're adding a little bit, but they're so far out that it couldn't be too significant. They'd probably been a lot better off. I think if they'd have had autocannons and they'd have been on top of that HUN Rook, it might have made a big difference in the amount of work the Guardian had to do to keep him up. And now those destroyers starting to go. We just lost the Thrasher. The second one's taking some damage as well, and the first Kronos going down pretty rapidly from the Legion of Death team.
Yeah, good target calling from HUN Reloaded. They looks like they left the Marauders till last because they have weaker sensor strengths, and that Rook's probably been able to keep them perma-jammed most of the fight. Took out those Hyperions first, which were able to do the damage. With a few tracking disruptors on those, they couldn't hit the battlecruisers properly. There's still some damage coming out from those Chronos onto one of the Hurricanes, and there's still a little bit of damage going onto that Rook, but the Guardian's on top of it. So it looks like it's pretty much just their waiting game now for these 2 Chronos to pop.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I thought the Kronos and the Hyperions had a pretty good chance in this fight. I thought this was a pretty ideal opponent. I guess they're at a logistics disadvantage, and they're probably at an E-War disadvantage too, since the the battleships have more high demand uses for their mid slots, like the ECCMs they're running in the case of the Kronos. But there goes that first one, so 1 Kronos now left. Still, I would have thought that that was pretty much the ideal situation. So maybe you know, if you're going to bring these ships, a major alteration needs to be done to make them work. Something other than just the blaster ships to make them worthwhile.
Yeah, they could have probably done with somebody remote tracking to them, because they were obviously being damped by these battle cruiser setups.
Yeah, maybe an Oneros.
Yeah.
To give them a little logistic support for the time while they sort out the jamming, and then maybe some support that has a chance of dealing with the E-War a little more effectively than 1 Nighthawk and some Sabres and Thrashers that don't want to get close to anything.
Well, with the amount of battle cruiser heavy setups we're seeing, it would make sense to bring tracking links on any battleship turret-based team, because you're going to need the extra tracking to catch them.
Yeah, possibly. So this Kronos going down without a lot of resistance at this point. Battlecruisers happily orbiting real close. I'm sure he's totally unable to hit them at this point. And that Rook did take a little more damage, but still nothing the Guardian can't deal with. I'm sure they're pretty comfortable right now.
Yeah, we've got one of the Thrashers there goes. So both the Thrashers down for the Legion of Death team. That's Kronos just about to go on as well. It's now just a matter of those battle cruisers getting on top of that Nighthawk, popping him, and see what happens with these 2 Sabres when they get in range.
And I'm actually keeping a little eye occasionally on this Alliance tournament chat, and someone said something about the tracking disruptors not being that big of a deal. And you know, if you have webs to keep the ships that you're shooting at in place, they should be fine despite some tracking disruptors. And it's actually amazing how little the webs do to counteract the tracking disruptors if there's not a ton of them, or if there is a ton of tracking disruptors. I know that as a battleship pilot, when I run into a Sentinel, even though I have a web, that 60% web that I have is not enough to counteract the tracking disrupting from 1 Sentinel or 1 Curse, let alone, you know, several ships fielding them.
Yeah, and on top of that, you're firing battleship-sized weapons at a battle cruiser hull, so it's got a less of a sig to begin with, so it's much harder for the battleship guns to track a battle cruiser. Whereas the other way around, even if you track and disrupted the battle cruisers, they'll easily be able to hit a battleship.
Basically, the ships, the smaller ships are built to outrun the tracking on the battleships already. The web is what brings them into the range of the battleship. It's not a counter to the E-War, it's a counter to the speed that they already have. So when you add the E-War on top, it's a lot to overcome, and you need some dedicated tackling, or you need something to take out that E-War support.
Yeah, right now we've now got the HUN Reloaded battle cruiser sitting on top of that Nighthawk. He will be popping very shortly. Now, one of the Sabres taking some damage. Hopefully they'll pop fairly quickly, and we don't end up with some sort of running around the arena trying to catch them business.
Oh, that is true. The Kronos gets the 90% web though, which is a lot better than my Geddon 60% web, but it's still it takes hardly any movement. Anyway, there goes that Nighthawk. Really, HUN Reloaded in really good shape right now, proving, as usual, that they're quite a force in this tournament, and they'll just have to run down these 2 Sabres, and they'll be moving on, no doubt.
Yeah, the Kronos gets the web bonus, but it doesn't help you if the Rook's got you jammed, so that's the other problem with that. That's why they took the hypes down first.
Yeah, definitely a smart move there. I think at the start of the match, you know, they were in. That's why I said I thought that they'd do well when they came in on top of basically an equal number of battlecruisers to their battleships. But I guess the Rook made enough of a difference to tip the scales. If it was just the battleships versus the battlecruisers, even if the battlecruisers had tracking disruptors, I would have thought they would have done real well. But with the E-War support and the logistics support, it clearly wasn't enough.
Yeah, and we're now just waiting for these 2 Sabres for Legion of Death to give in and get popped. And obviously, complete victory for HUN Reloaded.
Yeah, the Sabres are playing the usual game of running away, even though there's no possible result that would be better than just running into them and dying right now. I suppose they could maybe save their ship, save 40 mil, and save themselves from adding to that wonderful statistic we keep seeing, over 100 billion destroyed in this tournament so far, which is pretty outstanding.
Yeah, hopefully that will grow significantly over the next couple of days. But as you can see, no damage at all applied to HUN Reloaded, so even the Rook's now regenerating its shields. That Sabre finally going down, and just the 1 Sabre left. A huge swarm of drones trying to catch up with him.
You know, I said earlier that they must have had artillery or something long range. Those look like autocannons to you, yeah?
I think so.
I think so. I'm surprised that they didn't try to use that damage for something from those sabers on the Legion of Death team. Maybe kill drones or probably put damage on the Rook. It may have made a really big difference, but obviously much too late now.
Yep, still waiting for these drones to catch up with the Saber. I think it'd save us a lot of trouble if he just self-destructed at this point, or just drove straight at these battlecruisers.
Yeah, but I doubt he'll do that. People like staying on the tournament field as long as possible, which is understandable.
Yeah, of course, it's giving his opponents a chance to salvage so that they'll have some more kit to take with them through to the next round.
Which they won't need, because HUN Reloaded probably won't lose too many ships. We've seen, I feel like the setup that HUN Reloaded brought, we've seen lose a few matches. Do you feel like you've seen kind of this light E-War? It's kind of the Laconian Syndicate setup that they lost with to those Tengus in what was probably the best match of the tournament so far. A battlecruiser heavy setup with a little splash of E-War and logistics. And for a while before I saw Laconian lose and saw some of the other missile teams do so well, I sort of thought this sort of team that HUN Reloaded has right now might be the kind of trend for the whole tournament, but it hasn't been that popular really.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the other way around from these battlecruiser heavy setups is to be able to hold them at range. You can do that obviously with those webbed ships and then snipe them. Most people that do that, obviously, that's, the Tengus have been doing so well. They've been able to run away from battlecruisers and plink them at range. And they do pretty good damage. You see that the speed of the rate of fire on those Tengus would be quite good. No missiles, other than a few from the Lachesis actually on this one. That Saber, unfortunately, and no damage at all.
I don't know. We just saw a statistic on the screen. There's been no Tech 1 frigates fielded at all. There's also been no Tech 1 cruisers, as far as I know. Yep. And in case anybody's just tuning into the tournament now for the finals and doesn't know the rules too intimately, there's point values assigned to each ship, and your team has a total capacity of points you're allowed to field. And each year we adjust the point values so that different ships become more valuable within the tournament structure. And this year we definitely structured it in a way that, well, I say we, CCP Claw and all his wisdom, structured it in a way that we got away from the cruisers a bit because they've dominated past tournaments, and it just happens that destroyers are extremely valuable. So usually when there would be frigates, there's destroyers instead. Yeah,
and destroyers are actually only 2 points. So if you rather than 3 points for a frigate, you can get the same amount of E-War with only 2 points. Obviously, the tier 1 battle cruisers are the same costs points-wise as the cruisers. So unless you've got a specific setup that requires something like a Blackbird, then there's no reason at all to bring one. And we're seeing so many Brutix teams.
Is it possible that your setup could require a Mauler?
It's possible that you could require a Mauler just to be lols and so on. But certainly there's a few E-War cruisers that could be used, but in most cases it's better just to spend the extra points and get the recon version, which has got more tank to it and normally better effects as well. That Saber's got a little bit of damage on it now, but I believe we've got about 3.5–4 minutes left on the match, so we're going to be talking about this Saber running around and and the HUN Reloaded team looting.
I'm watching Judge Claw is attempting to strike some kind of deal to end this early, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen because of this fantastic Saber pilot. But he's either going to strike him down with judgment or allow us to just go back to the studio anyway, because the conclusion is pretty obvious right now.
Yeah, I don't see the Saber taking out the rest of the HUN Reloaded team. I think.
Oh, he said he's going to stop though.
He's going to stop. Excellent.
So good job him, but we'll see if that's actually true. From what I can tell, he's still pretty far away.
If he's waiting for us to give him money to self-destruct, unfortunately, he's going to be in for a long wait.
Yeah, I had to pay for that last year, and I don't want to do it again.
No, we're not paying people to self-destruct. We are impartial.
The Saber looks like he's not moving now, but it also looks like HUN Reloaded is not interested in killing him. So, and there's lots of people saying good game in local. Okay, alright, so we're gonna go with the people in local and just send this back to the studio and pretend that it's over.